Okay. So, I had a sleep, and I'm going to keep on plugging through this. One little thing that came to me in the night is that I'm going to do this thing differently. Not very differently. This isn't get gradient, where I make a new gradient. And I will these create new colors, and that's correct. So I want this add color on the gradient itself creates a new color from the given values. So rather than do that, I'm going to say just manually add, and I won't bother typing it all out again. I will just copy. Excuse me, manually add a color to the list of colors, because every time I use one of these methods on the gradient instance itself, it recalculates its own spline. Its own splines. So I will just add the colors manually and then calculate the splines at the end. A tiny thing, anyway. So I think I'd kind of settled on inserting a gradient after a gradient given by index, because actually that's the most convenient thing that's going to be presented by my GUI. Now, what am I thinking? A load of this is really, really similar for insert before, except I use insert before here. And I wonder if I can just make it easier. What are the checks that I do here? One sec. I check to make sure that that you're not trying to refer to an index that's out of range. So I suppose I could just limit that. So if you're trying to insert something too early or too late, then all it does is give you then it adds it on the end or adds it on the beginning. That's one thing. It checks to see if there's only one gradient. And it sets the V to be 1 if there is. But then this is kind of irrelevant, really. Is it? No, I need to know Cn, but Cn will be the first if there is only one. So, okay, this is... So I need to rejig this a little bit to make it make more sense. This is if there's only one. This actually... It should really be set to 0, I think. Otherwise, it's set to this value in between the pair of... in between the gradients that it will appear in between. Then here is where I say what is the actual node. So I can change that and just say here local indexed node, and that's where I will do this. I'm changing the name of it. That's really stupid because it's not. I'm using C because C is what I usually use for current. Index node equals. No, that's it actually. Index node remains gradient first node. Otherwise, I figure out which node it actually is. Then I say, give me a new gradient with value v, and insert it after n, not index node equals index node successor, new node, insert after index node. So I suppose this way of thinking about it, because I could do something similar to this for inserting something into a list, whether the thing you're inserting after or before is referenced by index or object, a reference. I could use something similar like to this, and this is the only difference. Like insert after stroke insert before. So maybe I should think differently and actually just make this an insert. Yeah, okay, this is all looking really horrible, but I kind of don't care just now. I'll come back and clean it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rem out all this stuff. And then I'm going to take insert gradient after index. I'm going to put it down here to be beside its insert row brothers. And unrem it. And I'll just say insert gradient. And I will put an optional parameter here, which is after flag, before flag equals false. So that the insert gradient wants a gradient index, and it's implied that it'll be inserted after that index. But you can say actually insert it before. Okay. I think that is. Then here I want to say if before flag equals true, else end. Okay. Insert gradient like so. Now, this is to describe this, me feeling like this is quite janky is an understatement. And also it's accessing this get gradient thing, which I also find to be quite janky. Look at that, look how horrible it is. Things like this, I will definitely do my little trick and inside gradient set make globals of these classes. Same with that. Same with these. I won't bother creating Well, does that make much difference really? Because actually these arrays have to be created every time. And similarly with these, to be fair, the main thing these are internally are sets of arrays. Arrays of floating point numbers. So, you know, mainly all I'm doing when well, it would just take them all right out of here. It would make this, excuse me, it would make this method look nicer anyway. And I would feel at least I wasn't instantiating these things, but I would still be instantiating arrays. That word really brings out my lisp. Instantiate. Anyway. So I'm going to do something similar with insert row, which is in as much as I will get rid of those really. And I may as well just do insert row as well, because all of these are going to be essential. Row. Void. And again, I will do this by index, because I think that's going to be easiest. And before flag. So, for inserting a row, I have to go through each gradient, find the correct index, find the color value given by that gradient between those indexes, you know, read the gradient basically. Kind of like I'm doing here, this get gradient for a gradient set reads the entire set to get a new gradient. This will read a single gradient to get a new color. Or rather, read a single gradient to get a new color. So, I feel like there's an easier way. Like, at the moment, the only thing the gradient set stores is this list of gradients. I could at least have a property which, what should I call it? Height, depth, length, it's really like num colors. It's count colors, color count, color count. And it turns unsigned int. Again, I probably shouldn't put a setter in here. I'm just kind of curious that maybe that is... No, I shouldn't want to set the color count. Yeah, probably will never really want to set the color count. I'm gonna just... Anyway, if gradients count is greater than, I will make this an int. If gradients count is greater than 0, else return -1. So if you get -1 back from the color count, you know you got no gradients. If then return gradients first node value colors count. Okay. expecting identifier. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Now that I have color count, there's probably a place I can use it in here, isn't there? Num colors, FG colors count. And where do I say if numj equals 0 return? That's monkey types int cannot be evoked, is that right? Okay, ITY, that means I've got brackets when I don't need them for a property. Right. We'll go number of colors int equals color count. So, what is it I'm trying to do here? Something similar to this. If, well, actually here I will just do this little thing as well while I remember. I will say I equals g limit int I, comma 0, comma numg minus 1. But similarly here, in a similar way, keep on using brackets when I shouldn't need to. Similarly here, I need a step size. Do I need a step size? Well, I want to say, if the color count is 1, what does it mean if the color count is 0? What does it mean if the color count is 0? In the case of uncertain, well, it's weird. It means that this thing, this gradient set, has somehow, well, if nc equals minus 1 return, that's a way of saying if there are no gradients, return. But also I could say if c, but then if nc equals 0, that means there is a gradient, but it hasn't received any colors somehow. Gradients should have colors. But it means that I'm inserting the row at position 0 and it's going to just have to be like white or something. But I suppose I will just do that. If number of colors equals 0, I'll do one thing, otherwise I'll do something else. Here I'm saying it's if number of gradients equals 1. So what is different here? If the number of rows is equal to 1, well, then it is different again, because I'm not selecting a color from a gradient so much. What happens in gradient when you say get red? It does this. What happens in gradient when it says calculate gradient? If count equals 0, return, otherwise. Yeah. Now the reason this works okay is that I'm certain that my splines, when they receive a single value in an array, double it up to 2. This never thinks that it has 2 colors in it. but the splines will return valid results given only one number. They'll just create a spline which has two numbers of the same value. So, having a single number added last by insert row, having a single gradient color added last by insert row will not break the gradient class, but it just annoys me having to build in another rule. But what exactly would happen then if the number of colors is 0? Then I am basically, this is going to end up being more horrible, looking for local current gradient equals each in gradients. Do I want to check and see if there are any actual gradients? I think I will. If gradients do I need to my goodness, if I'm trying to think if I need to store the gradient count. If gradients count equals 0, return. So now I know there are gradients. I say current gradient colors. Well, I can just do this one this time. Add color. Gradient. Add color RGBA. So, if it's a completely empty, or rather it has gradients, but the gradients are for some reason empty, that will just add a single row of white to the gradients. And because I'm using add color as opposed to adding a new color instance to the end of the colors list manually, that'll recalculate the gradient spline. Or should I say splines? Red, green, blue and alpha splines. Now I could use a select case here, couldn't I? I think select NC case 0 case 1 default. So if there's none, just add one. If there's one, this is about deciding the color. Okay, now, well, if there's one, it's about deciding the color. Oh gosh, what am I trying to say? Maybe I should set the color up here, like no, it still has to go through. Man, this is okay. I'll just do it all for local. I think just to save me typing local a lot. Local current gradient equals null. each ingredients. Now, this is just annoying. I have to think for a second. I really do need to think for a moment, because do I actually want to make an array of colours here that I'm setting inside here? Or rather, in these two cases, I set the values of an array of colours, an array equal in size to the gradients count, so that for each gradient I generate one colour in an array, here and here. In this case, I don't do it. The reason I do it here and here, in this case I might be able to do it in bail, like do it in return. In the case of here and here, it's about generating that array of colours, so that after here, assuming it's reached this point, it means that there is one or more entries in the list already, so I've had to generate a new list of colours based on the entries, based on the colours that are there already in the gradients. And after this point is the point where I go through the gradients and insert those colours. With each gradient, though, it's going to mean rattling through really what would be nice is find node by index inside lists. That would be, I think, the thing that I'd really like. Am I going to be brave enough? I have written my own list containers before, or rather I've heavily modified the monkey list containers. I hope, the creators of monkey don't mind. But, I looked inside the source, which is right here, and they have these lovely containers. Let's have a little think. Where do I look? I think in std, is it? Collections, list, node, remove, insert after iterator, backwards iterator. Wow. Yeah, there's find node and find last node. Sort, add all to array. See, that's not what I want. I want the node by index. What is find node? Node is a first. Before, am I going to be so bold? When I have had to, or when I've wanted to make changes to the module code before, I've tended to make a copy, make my changes, and sort of include that. At the moment I have two more or less entire copies of the canvas class, because I needed, or wanted, I say needed because I think I actually spoiled the class, let's face it, by adding them, these two little extra methods. And I could do something similar with list, and would never be hiding the fact that this is what I do. I tend not to use these things anyway. I could make a GList, and it could be called GList because it almost put it in among all those other things I need to fix properly. then, if I wanted to be sensible, I would go through my code and replace all my lists with GLists, and they'd be basically exactly the same, except they would have, alongside find node, where you pass a value, I'd have find node where you pass an integer. And it goes through the nodes until it finds the integer. I'd really love to add this just here. What about an extension? No, I don't like that either. Because then I don't want my list to extend list, just to have find node. And then I go around making instances of my list whenever I want to find a node by index. I'd much rather use this class. Am I going to be so bad? No, what I'll write is I'll just write another external function. And I might end up hating myself for this, but I think I'll probably put it in GUI Classes. GUI Classes is a misnomer. This is soon to be all my own special classes. But I'm kind of duplicating some of the stuff that's in general inside GUI Classes. I kind of think of GUI Classes as being what ultimately general will become. A crazy place to be defining some of these things, but okay. What would this, can I even write this function, and what would it be called? It would be called something like function get node by index, and it returns an int which may be -1, so it'll have to be signed, and you pass me. Now I wonder if I can do this. Not exactly sure how to do the notation for the generic lists in this instance, and I int equals 0. Yeah, I'm not that surprised. This makes no sense. Does it? To me? Oh well. Okay, maybe it does. At local. No, okay, because it returns a node. And that is probably why maybe that's why I can't do it actually. My dog is barking. And I am at 33 minutes, so I will leave it just now for a moment, and I'll come back and finish this.